तत्परं पर्याय विद्महे ज्ञानलिङ्गेश्वराय धीमहि तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ योगमहर्षि डॉक्टर स्वामी गीतानंदगिरि गुरु महाराज की जय। नमस्ते, नमस्कारम, स्वागतम, हुआ मोरे, शुभ दिनम, सुप्रभात, buongiorno, buonasera, buonanotte. Another Saturday morning, and we are trying to look at the concept of Indian culture. A concept of Indian culture where it fosters self-inquiry. Self-inquiry, inquiry into the self. Atma Vichara. And one of the most important aspects of being human, of being someone who is striving to walk along the Shreya Marga rather than the Preya Marga, I think it's one of the most important qualities, Atma Vichara. A capacity to start to question ourselves, look inwards for answers. Because, Lord Yama, the god of death, Yamaraja, Dharmaraja, in the Kathopanishad, he tells Nachiketa there are two paths. One is the Shreya Marga, that is the path of nobility, the noble path. And then there's the Preya Marga, the path of pleasure and enjoyment. And he says we have a choice whether we want to go down this path or that path. Sometimes we do wonder whether the other path would have been a better choice. At least you have all the pleasure and you don't worry about anything. But then you realize someday in some lifetime we have to start walking the Shreya Marga whether we like it or not. So better now than never. On this path of self-inquiry, one of the biggest questions, the most potent questions, the most pristine questions is the question, who am I? In Sanskrit, it is given as ko-ham, ko-ham. Ammaji used to say that the ko-ham had become the koans that you find in Zen Buddhism, where they ask questions that numb the thinking process. Ko-ham. In Tamil, the great Ramana Maharishi at Tiruvannamalai, he used to reiterate this by saying, Nan Yar. Nan means me, Yar who. Basically, who am I? When Ramana was asked about this, he said the most important question is to reflect on oneself, that Atma Vichara, and ask the question, Nan Yar, who am I? Koham. He said all other questions are immaterial. Now in modern times, if you talk about this to people, if you say, think about who am I, They'll start saying, "Who are you?" Because we have become conditioned, featherless bipeds with flat nails and thick skulls. We have become so conditioned for our mental apparatus to go externally. So we always want to know everything about everyone else and everything else, but we do not want to know anything about ourselves. And just like people caught in a spell, we are so engrossed. You'll see people reading newspapers, people watching news channels, people going on the internet and trying to figure out what's happening in the world. Everybody wants to know something about the external world, about others, people. But the most important question is to go inside. Who am I? Koham. Nanya. Now the problem with this question is that the great masters of our timeless culture, I like to define Sanatana Dharma as the timeless culture of responsibility. Sanatana Dharma, the timeless culture of responsibility, self-responsibility. Lord Krishna makes it very clear in the Bhagavad Gita. Your Swadharma is for what you are here, not somebody else's dharma. However greater it may seem, you are here to fulfill your dharma, that is Swadharma, the responsibility to your own self. That is what we are here for. But you know, the engagement with the external, Vedanta calls it Maya, is so enjoyable. You'll say, well, isn't it painful also? Well, some people enjoy the pain. Sadomasochistic tendencies that some of us have. We like to flog ourselves. There is this tendency to constantly go outward because our sensory apparatus, the 5 jnanendriyas, the 5 karmendriyas, out of habit, they are used to going out rather than in. And this is why there is a diametric change required, a paradigm shift required, where you turn that CCTV inward. That's why I like to say Swadhyaya is the yogic selfie. And you have to turn the camera inside and start looking at yourself. Have a hard look at yourself, warts and all. But it's so much easier to focus outward. And this is where all the great masters have said, you have to go on a journey of Atma Vichara, inquiring into yourself. Now, the Vedas, the oldest literature of humanity, give us 4 Mahavakyams, great statements, which are a good clue. They are a starting point. A good starting point. One is Tattvam Asi. Tattvam Asi. Thou art that. You are that highest. So, to that question, Koham, the Vedas are saying, well, one of the answers is, you are that highest. Tattvam Asi. The second Mahavakyam says, Ayamatma Brahmam. My Atma, the self that is me, is Brahman, the cosmic self. You say, okay, nice. Tattvamasi, Ayam Atma Brahmam. Then comes the very popular one, Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahma Asmi. I am that Brahman itself. All sounds very nice. Sounds very nice, right? Tattvamasi, Ayam Atma Brahmam, Aham Brahmasmi. And then they end with the fourth one, Prajnanam Brahmam. Prajna. The highest transcendental wisdom is Brahman. Now this Prajna is often talked about by Maharishi Patanjali. Maharishi Patanjali reiterates that Prajna Loka is a very important part of our journey. To be in a space which is connected to the cosmic transcendental wisdom. You grow into it. So it all sounds good, okay? We have a question. What is the question? Who am I? And we have been given some answers. Another answer that is given to the question Koham is Soham. Koham, who am I? Soham, I am that highest self. And so, our lower our lower self says, hey, you got the answers, now let's go out and have a cup of coffee and party. The answer to Koham is Soham. Why are you thinking about it anymore? Stop thinking about it. That's why my father said, he said the question is more important than an answer. Because once you have an answer, or what you think is an answer, you stop searching. And this is part of what our subconscious, unconscious does, is it says, hey, you got the answer, now why are you thinking about it? You already know it. See, the difference between knowing something intellectually, okay, knowing something intellectually and knowing something as an experience is very different. It is very, very different. Because what happens is, thanks to my travels and thanks to my internet and thanks to the people I know very well that Canada can be very cold. Canada can be very cold. So what is the weather in Canada? It is very cold. Okay, I know the answer. No, you don't really know the answer at all. You will never know the answer unless you are in Canada in winter and you don't have heating or thermal wear. If you are in Canada in winter without heating and thermal wear, you will finally realize and truly know that Canada is cold. But what do we think? Oh yeah, I know Canada is cold. Australia is hot. Australia is hot. We in India have been so brainwashed. We think Australia is hot and all Australians are always on the beaches sunbathing. So the first trip I went to Australia, I was staying with Murali. I didn't take any warm clothes at all. I was like, Australia is hot. And that night I was freezing in Murali's house because that room doesn't have heating. And I tell you, that night I learned that Australia can be cold also. This intellectual trap. The intellectual trap where you think you know the answer. What is the question? Koham. What is the answer? Soham. Wonderful. Now you are qualified yoga professional from all these organizations. Let me stop myself from even naming them. Why give them publicity on my channel? You know the answer. You are level 1, level 2, level 3 if you are in India qualified. Huh? And get all your certificates and go out there and become the next big yoga star. It is not about a theoretical, intellectual level of understanding. It is an experiential understanding where every cell in you feels it. This is why it is so important on this inner journey when we want to understand ourselves. We need to realize that often we can know ourselves a bit better by negating that which is not the self. Now, Lord Krishna gives a lot of details when he talks about the self as, being eternal. So one quality of the self is it is eternal. It has always been, it is, it will always be. The other thing is that self is gender neutral. And you don't have male souls and female souls and caught in between souls. No. Gender neutral. The divine is also gender neutral. But we like to give the divine gender just so that we can satisfy our intellectual absurdity. The self is eternal, it is gender neutral, and it cannot be affected by hot, cold, praise, blame. All of these opposites run off it just as the water runs off the lotus leaf in the water. So often, we are told by our scriptures, by our teachers, by our masters, that we are that Atma. We are that self. We are that Vishuddhatma, pure self. Now, if you look at Maharishi Patanjali, he is very clear. In Patanjali's teachings, there are no questions actually. Straight, Siddha Sada answers, we say. He is very clear. He says, you are Ishvara. You are Purusha, that pure consciousness. Wow. So you walk around saying, I'm God. I'm God. All of you fall down and prostrate at my feet. Take care of me because I'm God. I remember Bruce Almighty. Jim Carrey gets to know it's not easy being God, okay? People think it's very easy being God. Not at all. Huh? It's as bad as Atlas carrying the world on his shoulders, trying to find someone to give it to. But you know what? Purusha, Ishvara. But then why are we such a mess? Patanjali is very clear. He says Klesha and Karma. He says we are Purusha, we are Ishvara, but plus Klesha Karma. Purusha plus Klesha plus Karma is equal to us, you and me. So what do we need to do? We need to get rid of the Klesha and Karma, and then once again we become Purusha. Simple equation. You can read it left to right and right to left. So we are that pure consciousness having an individualized experience. And because we have come down into an individualized experience, in the process of the ocean becoming a drop, we have the klesha and karmas. Avidya, smita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, and the karma repercussions to which we get bound. Karma bandha, karma vipaka. So if you look at this question of who am I, we have these intellectual answers. And Adi Shankara, addresses this by asking a question in the Dasasloki. And he gives a series of 10 verses. Na bhumin na toyam na tejo na vayu na kamnendriyam va na teshan samoha anaikantikatvar shushupte kasiddham tadeko vashishtam shiva kevaloham. He uses the approach of neti neti, negating. I am not all of these 5 elements to which I attach: earth, water, fire, air and ether. I am not the aggregate of them, because all of them are transient. All of them are transient. So the key here, when you're asking yourself, who am I? You are an eternal being. So anything which is transient cannot be the answer. This is why he then goes on. All the identifications. Navarna, Shramachara, Dharma, Namedha, Nadhyana, Yoga, Dayopi. I am not all these rules of society. I am not my clan that I have attached to and identified with. He says even the processes of dharana, dhyana, even those are not me, because they are only processes. And he says in that Shushupti, in the state of Shushupti, you start to actually feel who you truly are. So what is this Shushupti? Well, it is said that there are 4 states of consciousness. One is Jagrat, wakefulness. He actually goes through this in one of the verses. It's a very beautiful verse that he says, Najagrat name swapna kova shushupti. Najagrat name swapna kova shushupti. Na vishvo na vatai jasa prajna kova. He says, he actually negates all of these. He said, Jagrat is your wakeful state, where you are awake. Well, most people are sleepwalking, but anyway, where you are awake. And all those beta waves are running in your brain on the electroencephalogram, EEG. You can feel pain, you can feel pleasure. Your sensory apparatus is totally working, and you have these experiences called Vishwa, with the world. You then go into dream sleep, Swapna, where you have all your dreams, but your muscles are paralyzed, so you cannot jump up and run around. So in Jagrat and in Swapna, there's a lot of you still there. You are having the experience, so there's a lot of this transient me going on. Then comes Shushupti. Now Shushupti is the non-REM sleep, the dreamless sleep, where you actually start to connect to the cosmos, because you are not there much. Most of the you has been negated. When you are awake and when you are in dream sleep, there's a lot of you, me-ness, I-ness, His Royal I-ness. But then that gets removed and left behind when you move into Sushupti, which is why Adi Shankara keeps reminding us, Sushupti, in Sushupti, you actually have that experience of who you truly are, because you connect to that cosmic self. Now the problem is, you are in deep sleep, you are not aware of it. So the unconscious experience of being one with the cosmos and realizing who you are, that Soham, comes alive in that moment of Shushupti. But the problem is, you cannot recollect it because you were not there. The you has been taken out of the equation. He says, in that Shushupteka Siddha, you realize Tad Eko. When you removed everything, all your attachments, all your relationships, father, mother, brother, daughter, all of this is removed. And in the deep state of sleep called non-REM sleep, Sushupti, you actually have merged with the cosmic energy, the cosmic self, which is why that deep state of sleep is so important for our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. This is why sleep deprivation is not so much about the dream sleep deprivation. It is the dreamless sleep deprivation that actually harms us. Because it's like the moment where your electronic equipment is charging. Your electronic equipment is charging to the energy source. So we have this happen every day. This is happening every time we sleep and we go into the deep sleep. We are having that experience. Tadeko Vashishta. At that point, the only thing that remains, Shiva Kevaloham, is that pure consciousness. Adi Shankara calls it Shiva. The Shiva consciousness, you could call it Krishna consciousness, Christ consciousness, depending on how you perceive it. Everything has fallen away except what is. Now you say, yes, that sounds good. But then, I am not there to know it. Well, that's one of the problems. When you attain Kaivalya, you are not there to know it anymore. Because there's no you. When you are truly in Samadhi, there's no you. So that is the difficulty. So the yogis said, well, we want to experience that Tadeko Vashishta Shiva Kevaloham Shushupteka Siddha. They said, how can we do this consciously? And at that point, the Yoga Nidra was created. Yoga Nidra is not, and I repeat, is not just any other relaxation technique. It is a means to experience the Shushupti. It is a means to experience that Shushupti state where you actually find the answer to who am I, Koham. The reality of Soham comes alive in you. It is no longer an intellectual exercise. It is no longer an intellectual fill in the blank answer. But it has become an experience. Another way you can experience this is through Karma Yoga. Selfless action. Where you are doing the action for the greater good without attachment to it and without that sense of me. You have discarded the me, and as the meanness is discarded, the we-ness grows, and then you have that experience of what you truly are. Karma Yoga is an amazing means for that to happen. Now, Karma Yoga doesn't mean you say, oh, today 1 hour I'm going to clean the ashram. And then you take a photo of it and you put it on Instagram and Facebook and you say, I am doing Karma Yoga and Ananda Ashram. And if I didn't do Karma Yoga and Ananda Ashram would collapse. What a load of egotistic rubbish. Everybody gets stuck in that. Karma Yoga is when you do it and nobody even knows you have done it. You realize what's happening. You are negating all the attachments. You are all the recognition, all the attachment. You are just doing it for the sake of doing, and in that moment you experience yourself. I often say that through meditation, dhyana, and for me music is meditation, we actually lose ourselves. We lose ourselves, and in that loss of the self, we actually find ourselves. We find an answer to who am I in that losing of the lower self. It is an experience where you have to let go. That is why Ammaji used to say, nobody is perfect. Nobody is perfect. She said, in meditation, in dhyanam, you become nobody. And hence you become perfect. It's a play on the word, but it's a very good experience. Nobody is perfect. In meditation, you become nobody. Everybody wants to be somebody. I want to do yoga to become somebody. Again, another statement Amma made in this regard is, she said, everybody is running around. Yoga for personality development. The most popular course, along with yoga for stress management. She said, everybody is running around yoga for personality development. Ammaji used to say, yoga is actually impersonality development. You transcend the persona, which is the mask, which is that illusionary mask that you put on. Your persona is transcended. So it is impersonality development. What beautiful ways for us to think about it. You know, when we talk about this self and we say, oh, it is the Brahman. Ayam Atma Brahmam, Prajnanam Brahmam, Aham Brahmasmi. The question comes, what is this Brahman? And this is why there's a very beautiful story that is related to Rishi Bhrigu, who is the originator of the tradition that we follow. On one side, tracing our way back to Bhrigu. Bhrigu, as a young rishi, wanted to know what is this Brahman, what is this self that we talk about. So he goes to his father, Varuna. Varuna is the Indian version of Neptune, or rather Neptune is the European version of Varuna. Varuna. He is the lord of the waters. Bhrigu asks his father. He said, what is this Brahman? How can I know it? His father says, okay, go and do some tapasya. Go and do some abhyasa. Contemplate it, ruminate on it, introspect on it. So, Bhrigu goes away. Some versions say for a year. But anyway, quite a period of time. And he comes back and he says, I have contemplated this question. And he said, I have come to the conclusion that food, annam, is Brahman. Varuna says, okay, that's good. But is that all? I think you need to go and contemplate more. So Bhrigu again goes, contemplates for a lengthy period of time, a year or two, comes back to his father and he says, dear father, I have contemplated and I realize the prana is Brahman, the life force. His father says, okay, that's good. I think you need to go and contemplate even more. See, those were the days where people were not interested in this quick fix. Dr. Ananda, I have 10 minutes. Can you give me the secret to immortality? Huh? Well, if I had that secret, I would be immortal, okay? Not this mortal being who feels a stomachache. So the first realization he has is annam, food is Brahman. He goes deeper, he says prana is Brahman. Again he goes, comes back, he says manas, the mind is Brahman. Again he goes, contemplates, does tapasya, sadhana, comes back and says, I believe that jnanam, the higher wisdom, vijnana, is Brahman. And again he goes and comes back and he says, bliss, anandam, is Brahman. Now, if you have been following this, you would have realized This is basically the model of the Pancha Kosha. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. What are you doing? You're going deeper and deeper. First, the identification with the body. I am the body. Then starting to understand that body is not the complete you. There's something more than the body. What is that something more than the body? It is the life force. You contemplated what is more than that life force. It is the mind force. You go deeper and you say, what is it deeper? And you come into this higher discerning ability that comes. Maharishi Patanjali calls it Viveka Khyati. And he says, Yoganga Anushtanat Ashuddhi Kshaye Jnana Deepti Viveka Khyati. You want to have that perspective. And then, of course, Anandam is the highest. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. This is found in the Taittiriya Upanishad, part of the Krishna Yajurveda, and it is called Bhrigu Valli. Valli. Bhrigu Valli is this introspection that Bhrigu goes through. There's also the Ananda Valli, this understanding of the blissful state, which is why when we talk about that answer, the question that we have asked, who am I? What am I? Anandam, Satchidanandam, Sat Chit Anandam is our, highest state. Sat, the reality. Chit, the highest consciousness, and Anandam, bliss. We are Anandam, Satchidanandam. And that is why we realize Shivoham, 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 Soham, Satchidananda, Swarupoham. We are of the essential nature. Our Swarupa is of Satchit Anandam. Shivoham, 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 Soham, Satchidananda Swarupoham. Shivoham, 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 Soham, Satchidananda Swarupoham. Shivoham, 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 Soham, Satchidananda Swarupoham. Satchidananda Swarupoham. Shivoham, 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 Soham, Satchidananda Swarupoham. What beautiful way to experience the answer. Not this intellectual rationality that we admire so much. We are put on a pedestal. You have to feel the answer. You have to feel the answer. And that is why, what a beautiful way to feel in every cell of your body, that answer. Now when the students come for the 6-month course, Ammaji used to often give them an interesting exercise where they had to write down 100 answers to the question, who am I? And it's a very good exercise worth doing. And you start to actually see, what do you identify with? You identify with your name, you identify with your religion, you identify with your family, you identify with your job title, you identify with your, social security number, you identify with, the foods you like, you identify with the places you like, you love all this. And then after about 30, 40 answers, you start to really have to introspect. You have to really start to introspect, because all these transient identifications start to fall away, and you're like, what am I really? Who am I really? It is when we start asking ourselves that question, it is when we start ruminating on that question, Atma Vichara. And this Atma Vichara, the Kathopanishad, gives a beautiful image to it. And the other day, Sri Bharata was bringing it out in his talk, where the concept of the body being the chariot. The body is the chariot. The self, the Atma, is the passenger. The body is the chariot. The buddhi, the higher discerning intellect, is the charioteer. The senses are the horses, and the mind the reins to the horses. What a beautiful visual metaphor of who we are and how we relate to this universe in which we live. That self is traveling. That self which is us, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Atma Brahman. It is traveling in that chariot which is the body. The body is being driven by the buddhi, the intellect, the discernment, and the mind, the reins, and the senses, and the sensory object is the path on which we are traveling. How can you be in this life, and how can you realize that this is all just a journey for the self? King Janaka, the father of Ma Sita Devi, the ruler of Mithila, he was a Raja Yogi. He was a king who was a yogi. Why was he a yogi? He was a king. He lived in luxury. He was caught up in day-to-day debates and interactions with people, and having to sentence people to death, and having to govern the country, and having to put laws, and he had to do all of that. But he was a Raja Yogi because he was able to be focused on the fact that all of this is just a journey of the self. The self is having this experience. It is having an experience. It's just an experience. It's as if you're sitting in a movie, watching a movie. You watch the movie, you come out of it. Hopefully you don't stay there forever in that movie. And this is why such examples are given in our culture. King Janaka. Because otherwise people think, in order to be spiritual, you have to go and live in a cave. In order to be spiritual, you must be in poverty. This crazy connection between spirituality and poverty, I don't know really where this came in. Spirituality is abundance. Spirituality is abundance, not poverty. Abundance of your whole life. Every aspect of your life must be brought into abundance. And the key is the viveka. The key is the capacity to do what you need to do, but realize you are not the doer actually. Do it for the sake of doing. Have what is called Sakshi Bhava, the witnessing attitude. This witnessing attitude, where you are witnessing your life. What a beautiful state of being is brought out in these thoughts. And remember, spirituality should not be an escapism. Many people think spirituality is an escapism. I'm so spiritual, I'm not going to work. I'm so spiritual, I'm not going to get married. I'm so spiritual, I'm not going to help people. I'm so spiritual, I'm going to sit on the beach and meditate while everybody else has to cook and wash for me. That's an escapism. That's not spirituality. That is egotistic escapism. Self-preservation. Spirituality is when you are in tune with your own spirit and you flow with it. You flow with it. And the experiences that come through it. In the 4 stages of life, the stage of studentship, brahmacharya, through the stage of householdership, hold the house, burn your fingers. Grahastha, graha hasta, holding the house in your hands and burn your fingers. Then you can come into vanaprastha and then sannyasa. Going through these phases, and in each stage of the phase, realizing there is an experience to be gained by the self through the life you live. So it is not this thing, oh, I am the cosmic self, so I'm not going to do anything. You are the cosmic self, so you must do everything. But you do it without ownership. You do without ownership. You live without ownership. You realize you are just the vehicle. You are the caretaker. As I often say, we are the caretakers of this planet, not the owners of this planet. We human beings have messed that equation up. We think we own this planet so we can do whatever we want with it. I care a damn attitude of humanity towards this planet. Because we have forgotten we are the caretakers. We are to be the caretakers and take care of the planet. The same thing with the Atma. And this is why when we reflect on this question, Koham, Nanya, Ramana Maharishi again gave a beautiful answer. He gave a phrase called Summa Iru. Summa Iru literally translates as shut up, be quiet. But if you look at it from a deeper perspective, you'll realize it means just be. Summa Iru, just be. You are doing whatever you are doing, but you are in a state of being. That's why we are human beings, okay? To have that experience. So it is not that you are not, if you are a father, experience what being a father is. If you are a mother, experience what it is to be a mother. If you are a daughter, experience what it is to be a daughter. And in doing so, you start to understand the self much, much better. And as you start to give of yourself, the more you give of yourself, the more you grow into yourself. That process of giving, we are meant to be a giver, not a grabber. The more you grab, the more you have limited yourself to the impermanent, transient. The more you give, the more you're opening up to the permanent, transcendental. Because Maharishi Patanjali reminds us, he says, why do we have all this confusion? He says, because of avidya. Tasya hetu avidya. And because of that avidya, we go into amnesia, forgetting who we truly are. Like Narada forgetting he is Narada and has to get water for Krishna or Vishnu. He gets caught up in everything and then finally one day realizes that it was all just a make-believe drama going on. Now the danger of these thoughts is that sometimes it can push people into inaction. And that is why it is important that the Atma Vichara, the self-reflection, self-inquiry, and these type of thoughts shouldn't push you away from doing what you are to do wherever you are, because your dharma is the key to unlocking the secrets of who you are. You have to fulfill your dharma, your swadharma. Whatever your dharma may be, the more you mindfully try to fulfill your dharma, the more you grow into your own self. And suddenly that answer to who am I starts to come alive in us. That soham comes alive. It's not an intellectual answer. I really get tired of this fact that everybody thinks, oh yeah, the answer to koham is soham, so I know it. Can we go on to the next lesson? Um, the whole lesson is the path to realizing ourselves. The deeper we go into it, the more we connect to ourselves. And whether things are pleasant, whether they are unpleasant, whether they are ego gratifying or ego negating, whether they are financially viable or not, whether they are emotionally viable or not, everything starts to become a means, towards us understanding ourselves better. And then, Shivoham, 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 Soham, Sachidananda, Swarupoham. Starts to come alive. Starts to come alive. May that come alive in each and every one of us. May we be blessed to realize ourselves, know ourselves. So important to understand ourselves, because the more we understand ourselves, the more we can understand others. It's the same self. It's the same self. So the more you understand yourself, the more you understand others. The more understanding you are, the less maybe misunderstood you can become. We are so caught up with being misunderstood. The question is, are we understanding enough? Thank you for being with me today. Yet another day. An opportunity for me to do a bit of self-reflection. An opportunity for us to realize that there's such an amazing experience going on. If just we have the eyes and we have the ears. Do we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear? And do we have a heart that can feel it? Well, if we have that, that Hari Om Tat Sat Tattvamasi, Ayamatma Brahmam Aham Brahmasmi and Prajnanam Brahmam will become the reality. Thank you so much. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om Dhanyavadaha. Merci, grazie, danke, and nandri, manaka. See you all later, whenever that later is.